what exactly got me into detention on the last art retreat that I attended. Before we get to that part of the story, I need to go back and show you just a little bit more about the type of work that I normally create. But the reason I wanted to show you what my normal work looks like is because I just got home from a art retreat. I had the opportunity to attend an art retreat up at Hunter Moon Homestead, and I learned from this amazing Scottish artist. Her name is Elaine Spears. And I really was able to stretch. And when I say stretch, I learned so much and I really pushed up against my creative boundaries in that it's the way that Elaine works is much softer, okay? And when I say that, I mean specifically, she does a lot more blending of colors than I do. I have a lot more defined shapes with hard edges. And so I actually want to show you some of the work that I did at the art retreat because it's so far out of my normal wheelhouse. And yet it was really fun to do something different than what I normally do. And it took a lot of really stretching myself. And that's actually what I want to talk about in this video because I actually help artists to find their own creative art style. And I think that it's important on a regular basis to stretch yourself as an artist. And so what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be taking some of the things that I learned and start to incorporate it into my work. And it's this almost like this messy, softer blending work. And I've actually done, oh my gosh, how many pieces have I done? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, probably around like 10 to 12 pieces. Some of them are on paper, some of them are on canvases. I did this piece right here, and that one is already sold. So I actually really just want to help all of you who are going through this, like almost like an identity crisis as an artist. And I think that this is one of the things that really makes, I don't know, like I think every artist goes through these phases where they feel like they need to shift their style. And so they push their creative boundaries and try things that are beyond what they normally do. And there's this there's this frustration that happens because we're not happy with what we're doing. And also there's this place where we have to almost like make that new skill and make that new expression our own. And there's this season where it feels awkward. And the only way to get through that is to push through it. And so I'm going to share with you the pieces that I made, and then I'm going to share with you the work that I am creating that's kind of taking what I learned from her and then making it my own and having some elements in it that are still me, but with what I learned from her. And so I'm really excited about that. And the other thing I want to say is this. I personally believe that we paint the things that we need the most in our lives, okay? And so, you know, as I am exploring like this new softness in my work, I feel like it's because I have this desire for more softness in my life. I am really tired of hustle culture and of feeling like I have to achieve certain things in my business. And I'm just feeling this desire to be much softer in the way that I approach everything, you know, be more gentle with myself and, you know, explore, I don't know, just a more restful attitude towards life, and just trusting that, you know, God is taking care of me and all of those things. And so I feel like in my expressing and growing into this softness in my style, it's actually a reflection of what's going on inside of here. And I think that's one of the biggest tips that I can leave with all of you, is that when you feel drawn to painting a certain thing, it's often a reflection of what's going on in your life. And so that is the number one important part of this video. There, you know, there will be seasons where your style shifts, changes, grows, and that's okay. That, you know, part of being an artist is being willing to flow into those new places, right? And otherwise we would be bored out of our minds. And I don't know about you, but as an artist, I can get frustrated with doing the same thing over and over again. Although I will say, I have now made and sold over 600 of these minis, and I don't know that I'll ever completely stop making them, but we'll see. I don't know. Anyways, I just wanted to mention that. So really soon I will share all of the different pieces that I made from the art workshop.
So I'm just getting the shapes. I'm going all the way up and I'm crossing over what I've drawn already. Can everybody see?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going right down.
She whacked it in.
to get to where you are all at. And the colours are going to use. You're probably going to think there's not much difference in colour, but there will be. And this is when you start painting a lot of the bit that's going on in here. So I'm half closing my eyes and I'm drawing over, painting over, I always say drawing, but painting
So
over.
you're kind of doing the same thing you did with the charcoal, where
Yes.
you're ignoring what's underneath it.
Yes. So ignore. This is when it's time to have your new routine. And then with the gorgeous pink, you can make pinks if you don't have a pink with reds, oranges, dash of yellow and white detail. And you can see how your paint is naturally getting thicker.
Oh my, that was a lot to get that off, but I finally did it. This is one of the pieces that I created on my art retreat, and this one actually is my favorite one, and it might actually already be sold. So as you can see, it's a much softer type of style / expression. Okay, and I think it's one of my favorite. I think this one is my favorite that I did at the art retreat. And I just want to say, you know, it was, I think, one of the most challenging parts about going to an art retreat and learning from another artist is just staying open to growth and change. And I think sometimes, especially as artists who teach, sometimes it's hard to go back to being a student again. And Elaine was so great. She really, really pushed me and didn't let me, you know, stay where I was at. And I think that was actually really cool because you know, we all have our comfort zones as artists. And so the fact that she was pushing me out of mine was really quite cool. So this is my favorite piece. And like I said, I feel someone already has asked to purchase it. So that's kind of cool. And let's go through some of the other pieces. This one I actually really, really love. It, again, look at the softness of this piece. Totally different than what I normally do. And yet it was really kind of fun and also really hard too, because leaving this area over here just way more blended and soft. And even at times I felt like the composition was out of balance, but anyways, I feel like I grew a lot in this piece. I think this is the one that Elaine said I had my breakthrough in. I'm not entirely sure. So these are all with oils, and we basically used oil paint mixed with linseed oil and lavender oil, and they actually dried pretty quickly. So this is, again, we had a bouquet of flowers in the center, and we were encouraged to just messy paint or sketch. And so this was, you know, where you leave the bright pink of the acrylic background showing through in places, and just sketching a simple sketch with burnt sienna paint. And then I think I have only just added olive and sap green to it in just a few different places, just to give a little bit of depth to it. And that one was really fun as well. And then there's this one, which feels like a hot mess, but I know that it was important for what I was learning. And again, it's just the bright pink underpainting and then the burnt sienna sketch. And I was just sketching this wild and crazy bouquet of flowers that was our centerpiece. And I'll try to put some photographs in the video so you can kind of see what the inspiration looked like, because it really was just following what I saw. So those are the main pieces that I did. And then this one is a smaller one. And this one is actually a little bit more of a combination of my style and what I was doing in Elaine's workshop as well. And just a few more pieces. This is, again, very similar to, I don't know, it was kind of a combo piece as well, but also, you know, outside of what I normally do. And then this was our beginning charcoal sketch, and we had to really just sketch what we saw in another painting. And it was all about doing more contour drawings and doing really fast contour drawings of the actual flowers that we saw, and almost blind, so that we were looking at the subject matter more than we were looking at our own hand. And that is a really great thing. Blind contour drawings are a really great activity for loosening up in your own style and for getting that like messy, loose play. And it actually reminds me of what I did with some of the women on my Connecticut retreat, where I just had them speed paint their floral bouquets and just paint as quickly as they possibly could everything that they could see in their bouquet of flowers. And for some people, they loved it because it allowed them to achieve that looseness, and they weren't overthinking their process. And then there were some other people who were really frustrated by the activity. Like they felt like almost like crying during it. And I just want to say, like, for me, like, I was actually kind of surprised, because I feel like one of my strengths as an artist is the ability to loosen up. And I did feel like I was having to come against this like perfectionism stuff that was in my brain. Like, you know, I need it to look like what it actually looks like. And so I was kind of surprised that I was having to push up against those feelings myself, because for the most part, I feel like I am loose and free in my own art. And it could just be that Elaine is, you know, much more of a master at it than I am. And so having to, you know, kind of be outside of my comfort zone in a sense, it was really good for me. So up next, I'm going to show you some of the work that I've done since I've gotten home. And I'm actually in the process of doing a series of work. And I highly recommend that if you're wanting to make a shift in your style, that you really need to do lots of work on paper and do as much like imperfect practice work as you possibly can, because that's actually what is going to build the skills to help you get to where it is that you're wanting to go. And so I am in the midst of making some of this work and really trying to step outside of what I normally do. Sometimes I'm successful and sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I'm coming up against all the ways that I am used to creating because it feels comfortable. And so I am really going to make an effort this week to really push through some of those creative boundaries and work on that. And so if you are wanting to do that in your own creative practice, I have a free online course that's called 100 Days of Imperfect Practice. And it's all about this concept of building the skills through creating 100 pieces. And so, you know, it's really not as hard as it sounds. You can make lots of informal work. And like I said, I think I already have like 10 pieces done. So it is possible to create a lot of that, just like that quick, imperfect work. Test out your ideas. And I love this way that I learned in the art retreat of adding the linseed oil to my oil paint. And so some of the pieces I've been doing, I've actually been going over other compositions that I have started and revamping them. And I like doing that, but then I'm also going to do I want to do some blind contour sketching as well, like we did in the art retreat, and just stick to a monochromatic color palette at first and just see what I can accomplish through that. So I am going to make some sense of these pieces that I've made, and I will share them with you shortly. So one of the things that I teach inside of my mentorship programs is the importance of practice and repetition. And this is so incredibly important when it comes to wanting to shift in your style. And I think as artists, we get so incredibly impatient with ourselves. We see where we want to go, and we just expect the results to be really quick, like instantaneous. But in actuality, it takes a long time to shift your style, especially if you have a comfort zone within your style. And so ever since I got home from my art retreat, I knew that, first of all, I wanted to start on canvases. And, that is one of the things that I really tried to resist, and something that I teach a lot of my students inside of my programs. And that is, you really do want to practice on pieces of paper first. And that's because it's an informal practice. And it's so much easier to shift your style when you have a focus and when you are doing consistent work within your focus, and also doing it in a much more informal way. And so I resisted going straight to canvas when I got home, and I've just been playing because I keep stacks of paper, you guys. I start pieces on pieces of paper, and then I just kind of never finish them. And so what I've been doing since I got home is I've been going through that stack, and instead of starting from scratch, I've just been adding on to some of my other pieces. And so I have a series of watercolors that I did for my course, 100 Days of Imperfect Practice. And what I've been doing is I've been adding oil paint over the top of the watercolors. And I love doing that. I actually even have a class that's called Oil and Water. where I layer oil paint over the top of watercolors. And I just love the way that they kind of complement each other. Anyways, I have been going through my stacks of paper. Here, I'll show you one of the ones that I've started so far. So this is a good example of something that just has basically one layer of watercolor paint on this piece of paper. And so what I've been doing is coming in and really almost like masking in the background, but then building up the flowers to create something like this. And so this is one of the pieces that I made since I got home. And I feel like it is sort of a combination of what I do already, but then I'm really making an effort to have some softer, looser layers. And like I said, it takes time, right? It's hard to loosen up in this way and to stretch yourself into a skill that you're not normally doing. And so I've realized, I always thought my florals were fairly loose, but honestly, I realized that they can tend to tighten up really, really quickly. And so I'm going to share with you the informal pieces that I've done and then some of my works in progress. And I think that that's the biggest thing that I would like to emphasize to you is if you are trying to shift your style, one, it's going to take time, but you're also going to make some ugly art. And that's just the name of the game, especially if you're trying to grow into a new skill. You will make some ugly stuff. And so while I kind of am feeling out this new direction, some elements that are like totally me are going to creep back in, and that's so normal, right? So it's kind of like a dance. It's like you go a little this way and then you come back, and you go a little this way and then you come back. It's like the cha-cha, right? And that's the best way I can describe it when you're trying to shift your style. And especially I want to say for those of you who are really making an effort to loosen up in your style and you're used to working much tighter, that's probably one of the hardest things to do. So give yourself lots of grace. But like I said, I'm really focused on creating something a little bit softer and having areas where there's a lot more like blending happening. Okay, so where do I start? This is one of the first ones that I did, and this is actually one of my favorite ones that I've done so far, which that is normal for me for some reason. One of the, like, I always like some of the first examples that I do. But again, this one has like this little area in here is watercolor stuff. And then I layered the oil paint over the top of it. And I really like the colors. I like the looseness. I like all this yummy greenery that's like messy and whatever. It's totally outside of what I normally do. And then the other cool thing is that there's these little bits where I have the original watercolor painting underneath, and I've almost like done the oil paint with the linseed oil, and then I've just wiped it off a little bit. And so it ends up being this transparent layer where you can see the watercolor underneath the oil paint. And that's kind of cool. I really like the way that looks. So this again was a watercolor that I totally revised. Okay, what else? Then I also did this one, which I feel like I kind of lost some of the softness in the background. There's a lot more like really defined shapes, which is again more my style and the way that I would tend to gravitate in my expression. Okay, so I still feel like it's a little bit looser than what I normally do, possibly, but you know, I'm just feeling things out. And that's what you have to do anytime you want to shift and change in your style. So let's see, what else do I have? This one is kind of my least favorite, and I don't really know why. I feel like there's no like real clear composition, and it's just not my favorite. Again, I'm taking a watercolor painting and I'm building the oil paint on top of it. And yeah, I don't know. I think there are elements of it that work, but I think I would need to really just sit on this one and see if it needs something else. So we'll see about that. And then there's this one, which I think is kind of fun. I like that the composition's a little bit different. I like this little green that's coming down here. And I really like this little area over in here with some areas that look like it's like almost like sketching with the oil paint and my paintbrush. I really like that element right there. And I do feel like it's a looser expression of what I normally do, sort of more like doodles with my paintbrush. And yet, I don't know. Like, I don't know if maybe there's just not enough like exciting things going on or what I think. But again, this one was watercolor underneath. And this one was one that I started for my friend Chance when I was on my art retreat. When I taught my art retreat, not the one that I attended that I learned all of this new technique from. But anyways, Chance attended my retreat in Connecticut, and I gave her, as someone who attended my workshop, just a little one-on-one painting session. So Chance, if you're watching this, hello, I miss you. But anyways, we did a one-on-one and I showed her just kind of the basics of how I would go about trying to paint. We had an inspiration photo that we were working from, and so the beginning layers were all acrylics and I believe watercolors. And so I just kind of finished it off. I like this one, although I'm not entirely sure that it's as, you know, messy and soft as what I have been trying to work towards, right? So it still feels a lot closer to maybe my own unique expression, but it is kind of fun, and I might actually, I don't know, I think it is done. I think I'm gonna stop there, but I was just gonna say maybe that I'll add something to it later, but I don't know. I think it's perfect. I like it. And so again, my whole point is that it takes time to go from point A to point B, especially as you're gaining your footing. And for me, this is maybe not as far of a stretch as it would be for someone else, because I've played with lots of different styles, right? And so it doesn't feel completely impossible what I'm doing right now. Okay, and then this one I think is my favorite one so far. Well, I shouldn't say that. I do really like this one a lot, but I feel like I'm getting closer in what I'm trying to do, especially with some of these just like messy brush strokes happening, and then the like messy greenery that's kind of hanging down with a hint of the vase. And for some reason, I just really love this little blue flower over here. There's something about it that just makes me happy. And then this bit in here, I don't know if you guys can see this, that this little yellow and white flower here, I think that's like also one of my favorite parts. But again, it's about moving in a direction and being able to look at something and say, oh, this is hard, but I'm stretching myself. And just recognizing what you like and making a lot of work. Okay. And especially if you've learned from someone else, you really want to take the time to internalize the skills and the techniques that you're pulling from someone else, so that you really make it your own, so that when people look at your art, they're not thinking, oh, that's just that other artist. So when I'm in this growing stage, I don't want people to look at my art and think that it was created by Elaine Spears, right? And I do think I actually don't think that I am creating in a way that is exactly like Elaine anyways. There is still quite a bit of me in the work that I'm creating right now. So let me show you, I don't know, did I show you this piece? Oh, and I forgot, I need to share that piece that's really high up on the wall. So there's this one, which I really, really like. This one sold immediately. And this is definitely a stretch in a different direction for me. It's really fun. It's on one of these thick side canvases. And I have painted the background with this bright fluorescent orange pink color, and then sketched it out with my oil paint and then added the details. I still think I use quite a bit more texture in my work than Elaine does. So I have my awesome clipboard here, and this, I know I keep saying that, but this really is maybe my favorite one. You're like, Wendy, you keep saying that. Oh, I do have it taped down, so I can't pull it off to show you. But I really love the dark. I think I want to tweak this area in here and add something else. And I might add just a touch of palette knife paint, or paint with my palette knife. But again, it's totally outside of what is my comfort zone. And so I really like it a lot. It's fun and messy and playful. Okay, I think I have 2 more pieces that I've been playing with. And again, I'm actually just painting over other paintings, that except for that one. This one here, I don't think it's done. I'm really struggling with this one because I feel like it's too messy, and especially the background is just too blurry for me. I almost want to come in with a different color, but I'm not entirely sure at the moment. There's elements of it that I really, really like, and maybe it's just that I need to make this center white flower a little bit more defined in the center, because there's things about it that I really, really love. And this one had collage in the painting, and I just painted over it. So there's still little bits of collage showing through in areas. And again, I'm not using, I'm just repurposing old canvases that I don't care about the paintings anymore. So there's that one. And this one I definitely am not happy with at all. I don't know. I feel like there's something off about the composition, but I'm not entirely sure what it is. So I kind of want to swipe some of it away and redo some different things. I feel like it's just too much white or not enough like contrast or definition, or the flowers are in the wrong place, and I'm not entirely sure what it is. So that's another one. And then I have a bigger piece. So the story behind this painting is actually I created it for a course, and it was a very specific lesson that I was making, and I ended up finishing the piece for this, this lesson, and I actually, have just been looking at it, and it's just not my favorite. And so I've been trying to loosen it up a little bit, and it's kind of one of those things that's harder than it looks, because once you already have the composition in place and sort of set there, it's really hard to then come back and loosen up unless you paint over the whole thing. And so it's like I'm totally trying to redo the painting, and yet I can't totally redo the painting because there's like a mindset in my brain that's like not letting me. And so anyways, I'm just trying to add some softness, and I did add some messy brush strokes to this one. But I think part of it is that honestly, there are some elements that I really like about it. And so I partly just don't want to get rid of those elements, right? And so I like the vase, and there are parts of the background that I really, really love. I'm not sold on all of the flowers yet, and so I think that's the part that I'm battling with in my own head, right? And I just want to say, some of it is like, a lot of my process as an artist. I don't know what I should do with this. Should I just hold it right here? I don't know if you can see it still. A lot of my process as an artist, and I think a lot of artists, they have to sit, or I have to sit with a piece and think about what does this piece actually want to do. And sometimes you're not in control of it. I know it sounds really, really bizarre, but it's almost like you're just listening to the painting and doing what it needs to be, or making it what it needs to be. And so there's that aspect of it when I'm painting something like that. Like, I have to feel my way through that, if that makes sense. So I'm not really sure about that one. I still really like it. Don't get me wrong, I really like it. I just am not sure if it's finished, and I don't know if it's what I actually want it to be. And if I should just stop there and see if someone wants it, because I have a feeling that it'll probably sell pretty quickly. And of course I say that, and you never know, right? So those are my works on paper, and I am enjoying myself again. And I think that's the whole point. When things stop being fun for you as an artist, that's when you need to switch gears, get re-inspired, and do something completely different in your creative practice. And so I think I'm excited, right? So what I'm going to do next is I'm actually going to paint a painting for you guys, just to bring you even more behind the scenes so that you can see what, kind of my thought process and what I'm doing for these pieces, and to give you just a peek inside the process of how I'm making these. So it's kind of fun. And if you want to learn more about just my whole mindset for making work in this way, I highly, highly recommend my free online course that's called 100 Days of Imperfect Practice. It will go really in depth, and I'll break down all of this for you. Why do works on paper? Why 100 pieces? How do you set your focus? What skills should you be building? Those type of things. And it's just a really great place for you to start if you're wanting to shift your style. So up next, I will create a painting for all of you. Okay, like I promised, I am going to paint a piece for you. And again, remember that the focus that I am wanting to have in this piece is actually to loosen up a little bit. And so again, if you remember, this painting is a piece that I've already started, and I've created some watercolor for the beginning layers. And this was actually a piece that I started many, many years ago. I often like to work in layers, so at any given moment in my studio, I will normally have I don't know how many pieces that I have actually started just randomly. And so I have all of these beginning pieces that are just waiting for layers. Sometimes I paint the background first and start from the background, but especially for these watercolor pieces that I've already started, I will then come back to them later at, whatever time, and actually finish them off. And this is part of one of my series that I have that's kind of ongoing, where I use watercolor with oil paint. And I just like the combination of the two mediums together. And the biggest key for making a piece like this work with these two mediums is starting with the right kind of paper. And so for me, I love Strathmore's oil painting paper. And what's funny about it is that I actually really enjoy working with what am I trying to say? I actually enjoy working with watercolors on this paper. It has this really nice linen finish, and it's just one of my favorite papers to work on. And the bonus for me is that I can finish with oil paint if I want. And I know that it will keep its integrity to the piece. So what I'm going to do now is I want to get a good amount of linseed on my paintbrush. And I still have some of the color from my layer that I just added. And I always keep some wet wipes or even just dry wet wipes handy so that I can easily clean off my brush in between layers. Okay, and so what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to get a good amount of linseed oil onto my paper because I want to be able to start bringing in the background, and I want it to be fairly thin of a layer. And so again, I am probably going to have to return to my palette numerous times to grab some paint. And if I want to dull it down a little bit, I can bring in some burnt sienna, which will kind of warm up that blue just a touch and make it a little bit more gray. I don't know if you can see the blending that's happening there. And again, I should get like a little cup to put my linseed in because that would probably make the most sense. But look here, as I'm covering over this watercolor with these dark leaves here, all I need to do is get a wet wipe or a cloth or whatever it is that you use, and then I can just kind of wipe it up in areas, okay? And even this part right here that had all the pinks on my brush when my brush wasn't clean, I can just soften it up just like that. And so the whole point of this, creative practice and what I'm attempting to accomplish is to bring in these softer layers in my painting style. So I am loving the blending ability of using a much more thinner oil paint and using the linseed oil to thin up my colors. And then if at any moment in time I feel like it's a little bit too thick, I can just take my wipe here and just wipe it up in those places. Because my problem is I tend to work much thicker in my painting process. And so this whole process of, using the linseed oil to kind of create more movement in my oil paint and have a lot more blending in my painting is the whole point of this particular exploration. Okay, so because this is a fairly new skill for me, what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and just work on, work without talking so that I can really focus on what I'm actually doing here. So I'm going to let you watch as I sort of work through this piece, and then I'll let you know exactly what I did and why I did what I did.
You've been around for a couple years, listening to players and buying beers, telling everybody your deepest fears, and anyone with half-decent vision can see right through the bad veneers. Now I've been hearing stuff about you and the slippery business you like to do, hanging where you're not supposed to. And I know that one of these days you'll get stuck in some mud you can't get through. You walk that walk, unaware of the destination. Your hand out for an invitation, and I'm losing patience. You talk that talk, then step back with the hesitation, foot in the middle of a situation. what state your head's at. Want me to smoke it for you too? You think I don't, but I get you. And I know just what you're up to. Somebody better cut you down to size before you try to take a stroll in those shoes. You walk that walk, unaware of the destination, with your hand out for an invitation. And I'm losing patience. You talk that talk, and step back with the hesitation. Foot in the middle of a situation. And I'm losing patience. When you come around, girl, we got problems. 'Cause you're not good enough. And everything you touch gets hurt. Somehow I know you're gonna get away. Somehow I know you're gonna get away. Somehow I know you're gonna get away.
Okay, so if you couldn't tell, I was really having fun with this. I think that the most important piece for any artist to find and develop their own style is to find processes that you actually really can just get lost in and enjoy the process of making. And so I am just having fun with this loose, extremely blended type of piece. Like I mentioned before, oftentimes my paintings tend to be much tighter with not as much soft edges. And so this new way of creating is really forcing me to step outside of my comfort zone. I often work in much more tighter florals, tighter shapes. I don't even know how to describe it, but this loose, soft, blended quality to this piece and to these pieces that I'm actually creating right now is a step outside of my comfort zone. And at the same time, it's really just fun for me because I can make a mess and then just leave it, right? And so, I don't know, there's something about it that is just really free. And yet, not that I'm not normally free in the way that I create, but it's outside of what I normally do. And so, yeah, I know I probably keep repeating myself, but what I have really been focused on as I'm painting this is really trying to capture some loose, messy brush strokes while having much softer blended areas, right? And so for me to go back into the oil paint in some of the different areas and really even just wipe some of it off is a new experience for me and not what I normally do. I usually just keep things fairly thick, especially with my oil paint, right? I like a much thicker, much more, I don't know, I guess the word is opaque color background. And so with working with the linseed oil, I'm getting much more transparent layers. And actually, it really reminds me more of using a watercolor, actually. So that is a little bit different than, the way that I normally use oil paint, is what I'm trying to say. So yeah, I am going to continue to make some of these pieces and see kind of what happens in my exploration and just let everything take shape and just go with it, right? And so again, I just want to emphasize the importance of doing many paintings anytime you're wanting to change or shift in your style. And if you enjoyed this type of content, please let me know in the comments, because I actually really like talking about shifting your style. And not only that, also I like talking about the importance of practice and working in this informal way. Don't forget to go check out my 100 days of imperfect practice in my classroom. The link is in the description. And especially if you enjoyed this video, go check that out, because I think you will really like that free online course. So let me know what you guys think. It is really fun for me to challenge myself. And if you watched to the very end, thank you so much for joining me. I know it was a long video, but it was really kind of fun for me to make. So why exactly was I in detention on this art retreat? It was actually an inside joke, and I am so excited to share it with you. Anyways, one of the things that I just want to share with you, and I've already talked about it a little bit, is that anytime you are used to teaching art to other people, one of the most difficult things for you to do is to step back into the student role. And so as I was going on this art retreat, most of the time when I go to retreats, I kind of halfway listen. I know it sounds bad, but oftentimes I, have a difficult time really listening to another artist, because I just kind of like to do my own thing, right? And so when I went into this art retreat, I really actually wanted to learn what Elaine had to share, because I knew that what she was doing in her art and through her practice, I really wanted to have a deeper understanding of what she was teaching. And so when I went into this retreat, I actually really wanted to learn. And I will say that Elaine is an amazing teacher. She teaches art at the college level. And so she is an amazing instructor. But not only that, I think she was able to really individualize her instruction to all of the different students. I mean, we had all different levels of experience, including someone who had never even painted before. And so one of the things that Elaine really did well was she watched each one of us and really encouraged each one of us to step outside of our creative comfort zones. And one of the things that I felt going into it was just this level of, this is outside of my wheelhouse. And I think Elaine picked up on some of my strengths as an artist, and she didn't let me stay in the place where everything felt comfortable. And she really pushed me to the edge of my creative boundaries, which I absolutely loved about this retreat. So anyways, as she was pushing me beyond some of my, levels of comfort, I started to feel this this is kind of hard, right? And she took a lot of extra time with me, and challenged me to, go to the next level in my work. And so at one point in time, I started making this joke because I felt a little bit singled out, right? And so I just made this joke with her and I said, I feel like I'm in detention. And it ended up just being this really funny joke throughout the retreat, that I was in detention, and that was because I was a problem student who was having a hard time with this new way of, creating, but also just, going back into this mode of student again, right? It can be somewhat difficult. So this is my reminder and my encouragement to you to always continue to learn and challenge yourself as an artist. I think it's one of the most important things. And so thank you so much for watching, and I hope you got a kick out of that story. I was laughing so hard when I was saying it because, it is good to continue to learn as an artist and not take yourself too seriously, you guys. And I think that's one of the things that we get so focused on, making this serious art. Whereas if we would just lighten up, don't take your work so seriously, don't take yourself so seriously, have fun with it, make a joke about it, that's what being an artist is all about for me. So just a reminder, keep growing, keep learning. It's the whole point of being an artist.